Hello everyone, and today I'm showing off an iron farm. After I made that joke of a flower farm, I felt dirty and I wanted to make a real farm, so I did. Anyway, what I've got here is a design I made for an iron farm, and it uses stuff from other designs. I mean, if you've been watching, you can probably tell. But I'll go ahead and show them off, and I'll obviously give credit to where they came from. So let's start off with the whole portal thing. Now, this might have been done beforehand, although the first time I had seen it was Logical Geek Boy showed off using portals as a spawning platform for the iron golems. And that is basically how you get a max efficiency module. He also showed off that a max efficiency module was going to be around 411 items per hour, and that's remained true pretty much. So that number does vary with RNG some, like how many iron ingots the golems drop each time, but with it being between 3 and 5, it's generally 4, and so he determined that it was around 411. And you can go check his math in his video, which will be linked in the description if you want to know yourself. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and have a look at the iron farm rates. So I've had it running for, it looks like 10.5 hours, a little bit over, or 11.5 hours. So I've got a pretty decent test about what the actual rates are, and during this whole time it actually didn't break, so it has been working great. Anyways, here is the rates. So if we have a look here, we can see we're at 1,760 iron per hour, and then also some poppies. Now, if this number, this actually is a little bit higher than what it should be. This is a bit of RNG because, remember, each golem can drop a different amount of iron between 3 and 5. So on average, each one would be dropping around 4. But I'm having a little bit more often they're dropping 5. So I'm getting higher rates because if we remember, the Logical Geek Boy calculation was that they should be doing around 411 per hour if they always drop the middle amount of iron. So essentially this farm is at the max efficiency per module, and that means that it is the most lag friendly setup of doing it, because if you have a slower module, then you need more modules in order to keep up with rates, and the absolute biggest killer in lag here is the villagers. So the less villagers, the better. Now, the other thing I wanted to show off was the script, the part of Carpet mod that Nembon used to help people with designing their own iron farms. So Nembon also showed this in his own video a while ago, and so I'm going to be linking that one in the description as well. But basically, it gave us some tools for all the different mechanics involving the iron farm. So a good example of this is the villager's buddy range. So in iron farms, you need 3 villagers in their own group, and they have to be far enough apart in each group that they are considered their own gang. And this tool basically just puts a little box around all of the villagers and shows what that range is. So here we can go ahead and type it in and have a look. So now we see all these boxes all over the place, and you can see this kind of shape up here. So essentially, as long as these people's box doesn't reach into these people, it's all good. And you can see this box stops right here, and then this one overlaps here. It's okay if the boxes overlap as long as the other villagers aren't in each other's boxes, see? So it also shows the amount of buddies in each group, and we can see they're all 3, so it is done properly. So that is one step out of the iron farm crossed off and correct. And now we can use the AI tracker command and we can clear it. So there are a bunch of other tools, and I'll link Nembon's video if you want to learn them all, but this is basically just a tool I used in making the farm, so I thought that I should credit it, you know? Now let's go ahead and look at the actual design itself now. So as you already know, it's using portals, and the reason for that is that we can make the iron golem spawn on the blocks between the portals, and their hitbox will be inside the portals, which will cause them to immediately be teleported away. And you want to do this because when a villager sees an iron golem, it waits longer to spawn one. So you want to get rid of them as fast as possible, similar to regular mob farming, but for a completely different reason technically. Now the other thing you may notice is that we're using a pillager in here. Now the reason we use a pillager is because the villagers are more afraid of him than anything else. They will see him from farther away than any other mob, and that means that we can basically space out these groups far enough apart that their spawnings are all independent of each other. So if you were to try to take a 1 iron cell farm and make them closer, like we just took a module from here and we just slapped it in the middle, it would be interfering with these guys' buddy systems and none of them would work at all. So that's basically why we use the pillager, because if we didn't, then these guys would have to be closer to the middle and their buddy boxes would overlap. So we can keep them farther away by using the pillager. And I'll show later basically how you can get a pillager. Now, the last little thing to note about this guy is basically you'll notice he doesn't have a crossbow. Now, it's actually alright even if he does have one, but if you want it to be just extra safe. So now let's talk about the villager cells. So this is part that I took from Nembon's design actually. And basically there's a lot of different ways to do villager cells, but the main goal is to have them all end up on a block and all be able to sleep and all come back onto the block and obviously not be able to move. So this is done very easily with this setup, and I can put them in the corners, which is very nice. So this is basically, I guess, a diagonal or a corner based one, I don't know what you call it, but it's very helpful though. So basically the end rods keep them in, and then the beds and the carpets keep them from moving at all. Basically they'll be able to sleep in this setup because of the carpet on string being counted as basically an air block, but them still obviously not being able to walk through it. They'll be able to even get onto this bed right here. They'll be able to pathfind to it. So if we go ahead and set the time to night, we will actually see them go to bed, although because of the redstone circuit they aren't going to do it for very long. Although I'll cover basically how that thing works in just a moment. But for now, let's just go ahead and verify that they're able to sleep real quick. And there we go. So we can see they all went to bed and then woke back up. So now I'm going to set the time back to daytime. Okay, so now I want to talk about the villagers' sleep schedule. So in order for the villagers to spawn iron golems, they need to be able to sleep every day. Although the amount of time that they need to sleep is not very long. It only needs to be for like 1 game tick, so it's almost nothing. So what this means is that we can keep the farm running at night by only allowing them to sleep a little bit. And the main way that we can do that is by scaring them. But we obviously have to stop scaring them for a second. Now, because this farm is kind of geared towards efficiency, I've basically made it so that they're only not scared for just a second before they will immediately wake back up again using this little redstone circuit. And if this looks complex, don't worry, it's actually not too difficult, and I will explain how each part works real quick. So if we just kind of follow it in a line, it basically just does a series of things that will essentially just power this piston, pulling the block down, and then power it again a second or two later, putting it back. That's all it does. So we start off with the daylight sensor set to nighttime mode. So once it becomes nighttime, it turns on, which powers this monostable circuit, which basically gives this thing a very short pulse. However, this repeater extends it just long enough for this little thing to pick it up. So if the pulse is too short, this won't be able to pick it up though. And what this thing is a comparator pulse lengthener. I don't know if that's the technical term, but it makes the pulse longer. And we need that so that the pillager is actually hidden for long enough to allow everybody to go to bed. So we put it through this, and we basically turn a note block on and off. So it turns on for a while, and then it turns off, and the observer detects it turning on and off. So when it turns on, it will pull the block down, which will put the pillager down here, we see. And then after a second it will get unpowered, the observer will detect it again, and he will be put back. So the last thing I want to talk about is actually the nether end and the portal linking. So real quick, the way that the portal linking works is the coordinates in the nether are the same as the overworld, but divided by 8. And we want to do that from the central point of the farm, which is right here, because these portals are basically in 4 different quadrants. So the central point where they're all closest to is the middle of the farm. So the coordinates that the receiving system is in the nether are going to be close to these coordinates I'm at right now, divided by 8. And those are 27, 20, okay? So let's head through and have a look at the nether side. So we could see, while it's working, but we'll see a setup that might have people asking questions, like why are there 2 layers of lava here? So in 1.16 there was a change to lava that basically made it able to push entities around now. And that's actually what this system uses. So you may be wondering, why didn't I just put the hoppers down here then? And that is because when there are a lot of golems coming through at once, they were actually piling up, and I had golems dying in the portal, and then their items were being sent back to the overworld or burning, and we don't want that. So basically this one just pulls the golems out, and it drops them down here. And you can see it's pretty much completely reliable, and it's sending it all into my little storage system here. So the other part is this right here. This actually cannot be a full block, it needs to stay a cobble wall. So it can be any material wall, but it needs to be this size hitbox. Because if you put a full block here, the golems actually will come through with their hitbox partially outside over here, and with a full block, other golems near them will push them through the block and they'll come flying out the back. But because we have this little air gap here, they're not able to go through it. So that's why we need this. Hey, so I'm actually here on my own server. I'm just going to quickly show how easy it is to pick up a pillager, because it's not hard at all. And you don't need all the fancy gear I have. You can literally just walk up and place a boat on them and they'll get in. So I'll just show you real quick. So you just want to find a guy, and a lone guy's better. Just slap a boat down and hop in with him, and then you make your high-speed escape. This is speed.